product manager writes a massive novella that nobody reads. Designers mock up a design. The engineers build the feature with some scope cut to meet an arbitrary deadline. And the team ships it to customers to see what they'll tolerate. By the time anyone learns anything, the dollars are already spent. For me personally, AI has completely invalidated the whole narrative of building this way. If you look at these top storytellers in the film industry, you'll notice that they spend most of their time thinking about the concept, framing, narrative, and sequencing before picking up a single camera. By the time we go into production, the movie has already been made on paper. It's all about narrative because the camera never made a successful filmmaker. What mattered was the person behind the camera. Hey everybody, might have overdone it on the prep for this presentation because I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm going to talk a little bit more quiet to make it through the presentation. I hope this is good. Today, the title of my talk's after the idea there's plenty of time to learn AI, and I made this talk for all my friends who are honestly overwhelmed by the progress of AI and honestly are scared of what AI is going to do to their career. So today I'm going to share an idea that's contrary to most AI demos that you've been seeing. I'm going to tell a collection of stories about how the best products and businesses have been operating long before AI got good, and the opportunity that AI has given us to enable us to operate this way. Really quick, you just confirm that you can see the screen. I don't have the chat in front of me, but I think we're good.
All good.
Thank you. All right, so this is how most of us have worked our whole careers. A product manager writes a massive novella that nobody reads. Designers mock up a design. The engineers build the feature with some scope cut to meet an arbitrary deadline. And the team ships it to customers to see what they'll tolerate. By the time anyone learns anything, the dollars are already spent. For me personally, AI has completely invalidated the whole narrative of building this way. So here's my thesis for this talk. AI has given everybody a camera. And what do I mean by this? AI is what digital photography has done to the film industry. Everybody has a camera now. Everybody can have a point of view and share it. Technically, more people should be making movies, right? And making money off of them. But it begs the question, if everyone can make movies or software, why is success still concentrated? Why is only a small percentage of iPhone owners making money off their camera? Because it was never about the camera. If you look at these top storytellers in the film industry, you'll notice that they spend most of their time thinking about the concept, framing, narrative, and sequencing before picking up a single camera. By the time we go into production, the movie has already been made on paper. They've already tested it. Production is just an exercise in executing a plan, a vision. Honest truth, the scariest thing is also the most exciting thing for me about AI. It can now write PRDs, make designs, and code at the median professional level. And it's already getting better. In order to stay relevant, your ability to have a point of view now and productively contribute to what's called the pre-production process is where the advantage will shift. So today, the stories I'll tell and the demo I'll share will not be about having the best tools or what's the optimal tool stack. It's using the tools to strengthen the narrative. It's something I repeat a lot. It's all about narrative because the camera never made a successful filmmaker. What mattered was the person behind the camera. All the stories I tell today for the next half hour are going to illustrate these 3 points. 1, learn to craft a good narrative. Narrative answers the question of why. Why is something in the product in the first place? Should it be here? Does it make sense for the market segment that we're targeting? 2, influence roadmaps with demos, not memos. A working prototype beats a written argument every single time. And if the picture's worth 1,000 words, a prototype's worth 1,000 alignment meetings. 3, Use the problem you're stuck on as your AI curriculum. You don't need to be AI first. You need to be narrative first. Use the problems in your narrative to progressively incorporate AI into your workflow. Brian Chesky, the only designer CEO in the Fortune 500, noticed something. The more people they hired, the more projects they ran, the less the product actually improved, and the more the cost went up. Airbnb was already in trouble before COVID. The brand was being tarnished by poor customer experience, random features, and a fractured narrative. He was doing things the right way, though. He was doing the product model, he was empowering his teams, and it wasn't working. Brian had the privilege of being mentored by Johnny Ive. One day, while venting to him, Johnny showed Brian that Apple was run like a studio. Small number of focused bets, products, one road focused products and bets, one roadmap, designers as architects, and a CEO who treated the company itself as a design problem. Now let's go back to 1985. Steve Jobs got kicked out of Apple. He was 30 years old. He sold all of his Apple shares for a windfall of $100 million. He started Next, and he bought a small computer graphics company from George Lucas for $10 million. Over the next decade, he poured close to $50 million into that company, more than half of his current net worth. That company became Pixar. During his years away from Apple, Jobs ran Pixar along Ed Catmull and John Lasseter. While Catmull drove the technological vision, and Lasseter drove the creative genius, Jobs stayed mostly out of the day-to-day operations. But by watching Catmull and Lasseter, Jobs witnessed a completely different approach to creating world-class products. Pixar's magic wasn't magic at all. John Lasseter, a former Disney animation employee, was disillusioned by the waste of the big studio system. He placed an intense focus on relentless, iterative pre-production before a single frame was animated by Ed Catmull's engineering team. It turns out it's cheaper to make prototypical movies with a small staff of elite creative talent over many years than it is to jump straight into the cost of a 6-month production with a bad script. Jobs learned that you don't start production until the narrative is compelling. And they did it through a prototyping method called a story reel, which were rough cuts of the film voiced by the animators to test narrative with their peers. John Lasseter called the process story reboarding because they didn't do it once. They did it over and over. They screened it every few months. The Brain Trust, their senior creative team, gave candid feedback. If the narrative wasn't working, they went back to the script. This could take 2 or 3 years before a single actor was hired for a multi-million-dollar retainer, before a single frame was animated. Let's fast forward 10 years to 1995. This is when Toy Story became a runaway hit, and Pixar shortly went public in November 1995. Steve Jobs' net worth was about $1.17 billion on paper by the close of the first trading day. I don't think people realize that Steve became a billionaire through an animation studio. That's incredibly hard to become a billionaire in tech, harder in the movie industry. And I think that's an important detail to reflect on how he spent the rest of his career and how he operated his teams. So 2 years later, 1997, when Steve did return to Apple as its CEO, it was 90 days from bankruptcy. He immediately tears everything down and rebuilds how decisions get made. The operating style looks very similar to how he and the team at Pixar worked. And honestly, if I made $1 billion working this way, I would do it at every company I went to. At Apple, Steve translated the story reel concept into demos to serve as the primary means to turn ideas into software and hardware. Like a story reel, a demo was a communication tool. At Apple, they didn't debate ideas, they debated artifacts. Getting in a room and selling your idea wasn't part of the culture. Every major feature started as a demo. And for a demo to be useful, it had to be concrete and specific. So for example, the iPhone keyboard. They used a device called a Wallaby, connected to a Mac, to test out the autocomplete function. It was just enough to test the interaction and get signal. When demos went poorly, there was the same stream of comments and constructive criticism, but there was never any finger pointing. However, there was an expectation that there would be a follow-up demo, and the new demo would include a response to the feedback from previous demos. This was the one essential demo expectation: progress. The demo would go through multiple rounds of review and phase gates. It would start with, like, for example, the iPhone team lead, and then the lead of the iPhone team would then approve it to go to the next phase, and it would progressively go up the org chart until the final gatekeeper, usually a VP, decided if it was ready to be shown to Steve. Every feature would eventually make it to him, and he decided which features got greenlit to go into production. Now, the relationship between business and R&D was very product marketing driven. Steve was the product marketing manager in chief and the final curator of what segments Apple would target and how Apple would position for each segment. When he returned to Apple in 1997, he drew a simple but famous 2x2 matrix that clarified the company's strategy: consumer and professional on one axis, desktop and portable on the other. He cut down Apple to four core product divisions: two for professional users, with a portable option and a desktop option, with obvious jobs to be done, and two for consumers. And then he divested from everything else. He and his executive team assigned directly responsible individuals to the teams. Not too different from the modern product team, but the core function was to make demos, not ship features. And then he chose which demos got the green light to go to market and represent Apple in public. And then the ones that didn't go well, he would provide additional notes of the features that need to go back to the drawing board, like a movie studio exec. Tony Fadell said each team used internal heartbeats, aggressive prototype deadlines to force learning cycles. And we all know from experience, when you give a designer too much time, they over-design. Tight deadlines force focus. It's really hard to make an end-to-end complicated workflow when you're given 2 days to make the next demo. Within 2 years, this operating model put Apple back in the black. Within the next 10 years, they were able to hone this operational process and become one of the world's most valuable companies. At Steve's memorial service after he died, Johnny eulogized: Steve loved ideas and loved making stuff, and he treated the process of creativity with a rare and wonderful reverence. I think he knew better than anyone and understood that while the ideas ultimately can be so powerful, they begin as fragile, barely formed thoughts, so easily missed, so easily compromised, so easily just squished. This demo right here saved the original Safari browser project. It was on the rocks. They weren't making progress, but making a native browser on the Mac was hitting roadblocks. Eventually, an engineer was able to make a wrapper for on top of an open source browser and rendered using a software shim on the Macintosh. In the center of the screen, they rendered a black rectangle, unable to render a real website, but it worked. Now, most product leaders would have killed the project at this point, considering it a failure. Apple leadership saw its progress and continued to nurture the idea. Brian hears the story and said, I quote, "I had forgotten about the magic of this design renaissance that Steve Jobs had created at Apple. They described it to me as this way of running a company with design at the center, which was totally different from everything I thought. Everything I was taught about how you run a company was opposite of how Steve ran Apple." So Brian made his decision. He wasn't going to apologize anymore for wanting to operate his company his way. And he spent the following years reorganizing Airbnb around these operating principles that treated the creative process with reverence and gave space and infrastructure for the best ideas to surface. One lineage, one idea about how the best creative work gets made. And as it happens, some of the world's most valuable companies. The first movie they greenlit was rebooting the core Airbnb experience. They divested from everything else. No more multiple roadmaps. No more each executive owns their own thing. They refocused the narrative and iterated on it until customers loved it. Well, did it work? Let's look at the scoreboard. By 2025, they reported 12.2 billion in revenue, 4.6 billion in free cash flow, meaning just extra money getting kicked off from the business. Brian said it's fascinating because that's actually more free cash flow for every dollar earned than Apple or Google. And we did it by not trying to make money. They did it by focusing on the core experience and making it better, not getting distracted by side quests and focusing on one thing, narrative. Now, I know what you're all thinking. I'm going to stop, break the fourth wall here. I know what you're all thinking, Caden, that won't work at my company. My company's large, has lots of stakeholders and politics. You have to get buy-in before you do anything. And trust me, after reading some of these stories, I've asked those same questions. I was inspired, but also discouraged. I thought, must be nice, but that won't work in my job. And before AI, it wouldn't have worked. Another concern I want to address is that, yeah, Cade, we understand prototyping is important. Like we all do it. Respectfully, I disagree, but I'm not saying that prototyping is important and you shouldn't prototype more. Yes, prototypes matter, but doing the occasional prototype, which is what most of us have done in our career, like maybe like one or two iterations before shipping something, that versus having a strong demo practice is not the same thing. Most companies, most of us, me included, work towards a deadline to ship whatever we landed on to market, for better or for worse. When these initiatives fail, it's chalked up to the thing being a bad idea, instead of questioning the whole premise of how it was built in the first place. The best teams, even before AI, do volume, demo, critique, iterate again and again, sometimes 20 or 100 times within a short time frame. The first demo and the 20th demo look like completely different animals. It's letting the power of natural selection uncover the best ideas. These teams aren't trying to invent the future. They're trying to methodically discover it, one artifact, one demo at a time. Before the last couple of years of advances in AI tooling, making demos for the required number of iterations is hard. It involves overcoming apprehensions about committing time and effort to an idea that you aren't sure is right. And you have to be vulnerable and expose that demo to colleagues who are never afraid to level pointed criticism. And what if you're wrong? Remember when it took 2 weeks to make a janky little Figma link prototype? It's one idea. The psychological hurdle is made taller with the knowledge that most demos, almost all of them, fail in the absolute dead end sense of the word. So I get it. This was the reality for most of our careers, and up until recently, was a very valid concern. But not anymore. Back in 2023, 2024, I attempted to operate this way before AI. I was doing hybrid design and PM work. I reported to the CTO, and I gained a reputation for getting big projects done and quickly building trust with engineers. But I was doing two jobs and it was brutal. Eventually, I threw in the towel and I told my CTO that I was open to making the switch to one of the full-time roles. And because I wanted to stay strategic and support the design team and give them space to do the best work, like my heroes do, I switched to PM full-time. At first, it was great because suddenly I had more time to be on top of my responsibilities. But over time, the job became mostly blocking and tackling. Alignment meetings, decision docs, one-pagers, PRDs. None of these meetings led to meaningful outcomes. Nobody was reading the docs. I was depressed. And I discovered firsthand that getting in a room and talking it out isn't a strategy. Then Claude Sonnet 3.5 came out. AI suddenly got really good at writing. And I started experimenting. I set up a project instruction that said, "You're my ghostwriter. Don't make up content. Just interview me and then write the one pager." In a tenth of the time, I was able to create these memos that gave clear descriptions of my intent that I was able to use to stay on top of my stakeholders. Then I started using Granola for note taking, and I didn't have to take meticulous notes in every meeting. My mental bandwidth freed up. And suddenly I had time to work the way I wanted to work, to craft my own narrative of what I thought the product should be. So, how did I do it? I immediately started making demos and getting them in front of stakeholders and customers. Then Figma Make came out. Unlimited credits. I can make realistic prototypes fast. Honestly, 2024 was the most interesting year in my career, likely everyone's careers, with all that subsidized token usage. I'm going to miss those times. One day, I was shadowing another PM on a customer call. His demo was not going well. The customer was in the wrong segment. The prototype had nothing to do with her job. The interview was dying. I messaged the PM on Slack. Hey, when you're done, can I have a few minutes at the end? I spent the next 5 minutes while he wrapped up pulling up that customer's actual data and loading it into my make prototype. He hands the mic over to me. I send her a link and she opens it. This is nice. Wait, is this my data? Are these my customers? I can see all these invoices. Yeah, this is what I've been asking for. When are you going to make this? The customer sold herself because the prototype had her data, her workflow, her problem. It was realistic enough to have her imagine that reality. The narrative was right. I understood the problem, and the artifact proved it. From that moment on, I knew I was never going back. AI made it possible for me to operate the way my heroes operated and stay on top of my day-to-day responsibilities. And I made the intentional decision to go back into design. Things were just getting fun. Why would I leave? When I joined my current team, I just started doing this. Day one, first week, I presented in design critique the first week. And it was just my assumptions about the company. I'm like, critique my assumptions. I showed in progress work every week, not finished work, pre-production work. I took feedback, I applied it, and I came back the next week with an update. Then I started showing pre-production work at least 3 times a week. Sketches, diagrams, roughed out Google Stitch concepts to get reaction from a group and provoke a discussion. I started encouraging my engineers to start showing their own demos. I encouraged my PM to use Google Stitch to make concepts of landing pages and what he thought the design could be. I facilitated formal demo sessions. Everyone gave feedback on each other's demos with the expectation that the team had to be aligned on that the demo concept is a good idea before we move forward to production. So nobody debates ideas anymore on our team. We debate artifacts synchronously in regular meetings or asynchronously in Slack threads. We found that when we focused on relentless pre-production before we decided what to ship, it turned out to be a lot faster than what was considered best practice. With tight feedback loops, we quickly filtered out bad ideas within a week, where in a traditional product best practice scenario, it would take weeks or even months of talking it out in a room or through end of year planning cycles that take months. We're running circles around these other teams, quickly getting influence and getting interest from other team members who want to work with us. Now, this is the usual story now of whenever I believe an idea, instead of trying to talk people through it and sell my idea, I make a demo and ask for feedback. Recently, I did 5 full prototypes of an AI native workflow in 5 weeks, like with backends and everything. The first 3 demos, I couldn't get them to work, threw them away. And it didn't hurt to throw them away because AI did a lot of the grunt work to set them up. But towards the 4th prototype, I was starting to get an interest. By the 5th prototype, these were the reactions I was getting. Panel, like in the first panel, VP1. If I gave you an engineer, could you keep developing this? VP number 2, I like this. Why don't we build this? Engineers and other designers, this is the way. How can I help? I want to help. 4, target users sold themselves mid-demo. Outcome, my demo is greenlit and officially on the roadmap. Not a single PRD written. It wasn't talked about in an on-site. It was done because you don't need to ask permission to do this kind of work. You don't need to schedule a meeting to argue ideas through anymore. Ideas are so fragile. Artifacts, on the other hand, can withstand some scrutiny. AI makes it so easy to make something that feels real. You don't need to wait months to experiment anymore. Just make a demo and get feedback. The artifact will do the arguing for you. As long as it works and it's exciting, people will follow you. It turns out leadership just means people are following you. Not that you're the head of product or design, but because you have a compelling vision and people like it and they hitch their wagon on you. So I'm sure you're all thinking, some of you, is that's great, Caden, but how do you make a demo? How do you make a demo if you're not technical? Caden, I studied graphic design in college. I don't even know how databases work. I'm not like, how am I supposed to make demos? Caden, I'm not technical. Caden, I don't understand sales. It goes on and on. I've heard all of them. So I'm going to share one more story before I get into the like a demonstration. And this is the story about Jeremy Fry. You may not have heard of him, but he's one of the greats. Fry made his fortune selling motorized valves for industrial pipelines. But Fry was not a pipeline man at heart. He was a builder of things that didn't exist yet. He discovers this promising young talent from a local university and he took him under his wing. His name was Jimmy. One day, while talking in Jeremy's living room, Jeremy told him he was thinking about making a boat and he wanted Jimmy to help him work on the project. Jimmy was confused. Jeremy, man, these J names. Jeremy never made a boat before, but he trusted him. What he didn't know was that he was going to get a master class in how to make demos when you're not technical. One day, Jimmy went to tell Jeremy about his amazing idea that he just came up with, likely looking for advice or asking permission to do it. And secretly, since we've all been in this position before with a mentor, I think it was to impress his mentor with how good his idea is to get some praise, maybe fishing for compliment. Jeremy didn't ask for a plan. He didn't ask for a sketch. He pointed to the workshop. You know where it is, he said. Go and do it. At some point, they needed to weld something. Jeremy didn't know how to weld. He asked if they could hire a welder. Jeremy didn't blink. He pointed to the welding equipment. There's the welder. Go weld it. Figure it out. Jimmy suggested they bring someone who knew about hydrodynamics, just to be sure. Jeremy pointed at the lake. The lake's down there. The Land Rover's over there. Take a plank of wood, drag it through the water, and look at what happens. Now, I was a little dishonest on Jimmy's identity. The young product design student Jeremy took under his wing was a young James Dyson. That experience taught James Dyson to just get started as soon as you found a compelling narrative. In his case, trying to invent a bagless vacuum cleaner. James Dyson studied art, not engineering, not physics, art. And now he owns one of the world's most impressive engineering companies and he employs like over 4,000 engineers and designers. James' first cyclonic vacuum cleaner was built from cereal packets and masking tape. He did not fully understand the physics behind it yet. He built it first and he learned second. And this is before AI, this is before the internet, guys. And then slowly he iterated little by little until roughly 5,000 prototypes later, which is something that you guys don't have to worry about with AI on timetables because this took him 5 years, 5,000 prototypes. He had a working demo that he could sell. If he could figure it out, you can too. The credential did not make the invention. The obsession with the narrative did. And that's where I got the title for this talk. He said, after the idea, there's plenty of time to learn the technology. And this is the maxim of how I got proficient in AI. I took Gene Rod's AI course because I had a problem. I was burning through tokens too fast and they started getting metered. And so took the course as a problem. Because after you figure out the idea, the narrative, there's plenty of time to learn AI skills to make it happen. Remember, you don't have to be AI first. You just have to be narrative first, then work backwards towards the technology. And if you want like something a little more practical, this is a distillation of my design workflow. You use AI to frame intent, make PRDs, consolidate context and research. You immediately use AI to functionally prototype, and then you do rapid iterative demos. And if the demo didn't go well, you go back to refining the intent, making another prototype, do another demo. And then usually you're going left more than right. And then eventually you're going to discover the narrative. And you're either going to find out that the narrative isn't going to work and you stop believing the idea, or more likely than not, you actually find out what the right narrative is. And then you jump into Figma, do the final polish. So before I get to my demo, I'll just kind of share like how to like find my work. If you like this story, subscribe to my Substack, The Way of Product. I've been doing it for 8 years. It's podcasts and narrative essays on how great work is done, how products get made, software, physical products, marketing, all that stuff. And if you sign up today, this Tuesday, my profile for my conversation with Eric Ries, author of Lean Startup, his episode's going to come out this upcoming Tuesday with a profile of our conversation about his new book, Incorruptible. And I have an advanced copy. It's pretty good. And then also, I'm happy to talk on LinkedIn, but I'd rather build personal relationships. So to connect, you could see them. You could send me an email at caden@hey.com. And then in the subject line, just put anywhere in the subject line, March 782. And then you'll get past my spam filters. So I'm going to do like a quick demo of like how I work, but like it's important to point out, I'm not really too concerned about like sharing like, oh, this is the optimal workflow. This is just like how I like to work. I jump between a lot of different tools. I think everyone can see a screen, but
Yeah, I can see your screen with two windows open.
yeah, it's a little tiny, so I'll do my best to like, kind of like narrate what's going on. But I have been working on this repo to consolidate all of my skills and for like narrative, and I call it Caden AI Writer's Room because it's all about narrative. And so you could just jump into it, and I'll just say like, I have an idea for an agentic harness on top of Salesforce, and it takes advantage of the headless capabilities of a CLI tool, but it puts a strong UX layer on top of it so that people don't have to learn how to use that terminal agent. And then the agent, because I trained it that way, will go into this idea framing skill where it'll start critiquing and refining and ask me follow-up questions. So who is specifically frustrated now? So instead of me just telling the story to you, I'm just going to tell this. I've worked with RevOps teams for years, and Salesforce sucks. The sales team doesn't like it. It's built for executives. So I've noticed AI is really good at querying data. And then the solution mechanism is a orchestration layer for agents to collect, analyze, and help you act on sales data. Evidence. It's my personal experience working with revenue operations teams and how complicated it is to get Salesforce to do what it promised. And then, I want to use the CLI as a base to build out the agents and tool calls, but that's about it. Then I'll run this, and then it will just kind of help me refine my thinking. It's like, think of it like a writing partner. And I use a lot of like movie metaphors and frameworks and like to critique it. And it's going to red team and critique my ideas. It's going to look through all the tools. And then I'm going to like start creating artifacts to build with an agent. Now, while that runs, I'm just going to switch over to, geez, I wish, let's see if I could just keep auto mode running. But that's like a big part of my process is like, what's the story? Like, does it make sense? But it doesn't have to be like a one shot kill. Like, so run Electron server. So I already did this. And so, ooh, I'm running it on Opus. Let me stop for a second because that'll just take too long. Let's do, and I also wanted to do this to like understand how like agentic harnesses worked, like the agent management experience. because I have a hunch that we're gonna have plenty of work to do UI wise in this future because telling people, oh, just use a CLI tool in Claude Code, I do not expect normal people to do that or hook up to an MCP with a headless system. What I expect people to do is expect just have the tool work. And sorry if you hear my daughter crying. If you have toddlers, let me know. And just gotta make sure that the API key is working. But yeah, I wanted to learn how an AI tool worked. Yeah, I apologize for the crying, but I mean, there's so many podcast episodes where that happens, and I just keep it in. But yeah, so the AI tools, I wanted to understand how it worked, and then I just started asking questions to Claude, like, explain to me how Claude Cowork works. Give me a level 0 engineering diagram of like the concepts. Okay, now zoom in. Give me level 2. Give me level 3. And like I'm starting to build my conceptual frameworks and then being like, okay, make a technical design and then like make it and then test it out, get feedback. Okay, that didn't work. Oh, like it's not a bunch of sub agents. Like it really is just an orchestration agent with a bunch of tool calls. Okay. What tool calls would be good based off like the Salesforce CLI? Okay. Here's some recommended tool calls. That didn't work. Okay, cool. Like now I need to like refine the system prompt. And then eventually I'm like, how do I make it a desktop app? Because the value is being able to access files on top of the harness. Okay, cool. Now talking with some of my RevOps, friends that I met over the years. Like, what are the top 5 daily driver use cases for getting data? Okay, I'll do these 5, and then I'll just keep iterating until I could get these 5 to work reliably. And so yeah, this is a functioning harness I'm using API key, I'm burning tokens. And so I'm just testing out and what I've learned. So like let's say like I want to do pipeline review. And so it's like the latest version. Now, I feel like this is the best way to prototype agentic features, like a harness feature. Because it's like, okay, did it break? Like there was no feedback on like what was working. Like let's say that I'm a RevOps, one of my friends, I'm watching this. I'm like, did it break? Okay, what did it do? Why did it do that? Like the tool calls, okay, that plan makes sense. Oh, why did this break? Okay, queried records. It also it turns out it's really easy to make like dummy data using like a Duck database or DuckDB or SQLite, and AI could just make based off your requirements a Python script to like generate the fake data, like thousands of rows. Now that didn't work. Like okay, cool. So like that's interesting, but like I want to see like an artifact. So let me. Okay, nothing happened. Okay, like, create a dashboard. Right. And then as I'm getting like demos and I'm like collecting the feedback, I'm feeding it back into like my repo to like refine the narrative and then making another demo and another one. And it's this self-reinforcing loop. And then this right here is like the actual Figma design file. So like using code to canvas, I could take these like primitives in like Claude Code and just say like, hey, send me all the primitives. I want to edit this tool call like component. Like now I could edit it and then send it back in. And like this is all like AI generated, like pretty nice documentation. So now I can like focus on just like making more demos. I can help that. What we'd like to see in the dashboard. Okay. So like that's the end of this demo. Be, like I'm looking at this and it's like, okay, well, what's like the like what how do you make a demo? Because I haven't actually done a demo yet. Let's say that like this failed and I get feedback like I don't know what to say here when they ask me an open question. Now I've done like some like in my head, I'm like, okay, well then the next demo would be testing out like follow-up question, like planning mode, multiple choice quizzes that we're starting to notice in like coding tools like plan mode, like clarifying questions. And so then I will go back and I'll use a tool. I'll just create a new session in Claude, or I'll use a tool called Conductor, which I've been really enjoying because it allows you to like use a lot of different, here, let me see if I can pull this up, which allows you to like have a lot of different repos going on at the same time. And it has, and you could set up like multiple copies of your repo just by hitting like this add key, and it copies the repo so that you could have like different ideas going at the same time and on top of Cloud Code or Codex, and then you could fork to different chats within these repos to quickly like simulate a lot of different ideas. But yeah, I'll start that. I might start a new work tree, which is just copying the repo instead of a branch, keeps things clean. And then I'll just say, hey, make a plan. Like I'll switch it to plan mode. And then I'll just say, like, make a plan to help me create like a Claude Code style planning widget that asks clarifying questions in a multiple choice format to get more data from the user. And then I'll just do that. And so before I even make the changes, I'll schedule, like if I was at work for a different thing, I would schedule the follow up for a demo. Like I'd enforce like a tight timeline on my end. After I get out of the demo, I'd schedule the next meeting 2 days from now. And I'm like, okay, put my money where my mouth is. Like I don't have time to like redesign and act on all the feedback. So I'm going to act on the most critical feedback of like, I don't know how to answer this question. And I just work on that one element. And then that's the next demo and the next one. And it turns out like stakeholders, when you're listening to them and giving them feedback, they're and the feedback cycles are so tight. They really like it and they're a lot of fun because they're just like, wow, this person's listening. They're acting on the feedback, and every demo, the thing's getting better until eventually they're like, when can I use this? That's a little bit like how I work. It's just about actually I'm not super worried about AI like being able to write decent documentation in Figma. It was never about the camera guys. Like now you have more time to make demos, and this should be the most fun in your career you're going to have. So that's it. So ready for any questions? I'll be happy to help.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Caden. Hope your voice is still feeling okay. Yeah, take some water. It's very refreshing talk. I have not seen storytelling quite like this with AI in the, how to say, in terms of depth and the illustration style. So the first question actually is related to that. Let me scroll all the way to the top. I
Okay.
think, let's see. There's a lot of comments. The question is more about how did you make the presentation? I'm trying to find that, trying to pinpoint that question, but I think a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, technically it's a story reel. So that's the meta joke of it's a Pixar story reel. I have like a film background. I think I was going to attempt to be a filmmaker, but like in high school I'd make a ton of movies with my friends. I'd like be the ringleader and like commission like these like projects and like direct my friends, and we like to, uh copy movies that we liked or like Key and Peele sketches. I love Jordan Peele, but what's great about Jordan Peele is like every sketch is funny because the narrative's good, right? He's a great, fantastic writer. So it's never about the camera; it's about the story. In the process, just talking to mentors and stuff, I drew a lot of storyboards, and I always felt like when a film project didn't work is because I didn't do storyboarding. And so like I have like a background making storyboards for my own like projects. And so I kind of got to take advantage of AI and be like, okay, I could do that. So I had an idea, and I'm like, how do I do that? And eventually, like what I did, and I'll just kind of share. I think I went into Claude, and let me see if I can't get everything that I need to like show this. All right, so this, and then I'll show pull Claude in. Um, and so like I use like a lot of different AI tools. Like I'm not too preferential. I think Perplexity is great for research, and like, I usually like to save my tokens for building things. I don't use chat too much, but I do have this project I used. I called it Developing Taste, and the instructions were um, basically like you are a pre-production assistant. Your goal is to help me like build a script and like think through ideas and beats of a story. Here's some stories I like, and I took like stories from books. The James Dyson book actually. So he has two biographies. So this is I told a story from this book, and this is out of print. It's $60 to buy used, but worth the money. So he has two biographies. The first one's fantastic because he's younger and he has more of a chip on his shoulder. But I like actually just used Whisperflow and like read into this project of like passages I liked, and then used it as a thought partner to like think through like the storytelling beats and the like the arc of the stories, and then eventually had it create like a an Excel sheet with like take this script and break it up into like multiple keyframes, which is a just a industry term for like the larger like visual beats of a story, and then one idea per keyframe, and then like it tied the like created generated these like descriptions of a scene and tied it to like part of the script. And then the next process was you can use Gemini or any other like tool here, but I created this space, which is just like a project in Claude, but Claude doesn't offer image generation. And so that's why I'm like, I think like there's no one tool to rule them all. I think AI tools are starting to differentiate themselves. And then I gave it instructions like generate hand drawn pencil storyboard illustrations. And then, and also like I had Claude help me make the system prompt. Like AI is better at prompt engineering. So like, and you could also use like skill creator and this will like do all the work for you to like create like the skilled instructions. So like don't focus on getting technical skills you can put on your resume. That's not defensible. AI is getting good at the production work. So focus on pre-production, have AI do the work to create these. Give aspect ratio like 16 by 9 widescreen, this like number of pixels for slide deck, rough graphite pencil. And your advantage in an AI world is the vocabulary you had before AI got good. And so like that's where you start like look for like your superpower, like your ability to describe why something works in like well articulated language. Because what talking with like the head VP of product at Intercom that like was part of Intercom's turnaround, we concluded like ironically AI is making us all need to become more technical because like you still have to program the computer. The only thing that's changed is that the programming language is English. And so you still have to be more precise in your language. It's going to make you a better user. So yeah, like loose gestural, hand drawn, visible construction lines, characters, simple figures, no faces by default. And this was like iterative, right? And I tested out different like outputs. And then I just started from the spreadsheet that Claude made, I just started putting in the descriptions and just pasting in the description, hit enter, and then it would like generate. And then I'd like iterate, be like, actually do this like over the shoulder and stuff. So it did kind of feel like it was fun to like do this process this way. But yeah, that's how I did it. And then I just used the Gemini Pro model. So that's also an edge with like Perplexity is that it is multimodal on models. So
That's great. Thanks for sharing this behind the scene.
yeah, it's getting really meta.
Yeah. Next question is from Anna. But first, a smaller group of people had to work through ideas before a demo was created. No? I think she was referring to, yeah, like the prototype idea.
I love that. So yeah, eventually you need to get more people involved. And I think that's like what the future definition of, well, okay, if AI could do like the schlep work, like the grunt work, like what do juniors do? What do mid-level designers do? Right? It used to be that if you wanted to like get started as a designer, you were just like doing the production work. You were these design agents for like more senior team members, and you're getting evaluated at your ability to reliably use the tools and like execute designs, right? And then eventually get more strategic. I think AI is going to completely reprice, right? Because I like if I was in charge of hiring all the like non-strategic like keep the lights on work, I would hire juniors out of university that weren't tainted by the professional world and trained them to like basically use AI to work at a senior level where like you're a reliable worker. And then if you are, you know, senior and up, like it's kind of repricing what's valuable. Like if your job is just taking orders from your PM and executing designs, I don't think it's worth the salary that you're getting paid. Like, and so now it's like your job is to make demos and like de-risk the idea. And so that's how I feel like like it's not like you're going to be putting the more senior strategic designers to like actually like discover the right solution and like give like, skeleton of what that right solution is, and then hand that off to production designers. Like I think we're going to have like a clear distinction between like pre-production and production designers moving forward, because competitive edge is not, if everyone can, burn tokens to copy software features, the hard stuff is like narrative, brand, operations. So yeah, that's a really great question and kind of set me up for like sharing my thesis about what we do with juniors now. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to it if you have ever, plan to share somewhere on the newsletter.
I'll get to try it one day, but yeah, I think to put into one sentence, because I've just articulated that out loud. Like in movies, there are like pre-production employees that like work on the concept first, and then you hire all the production people, right? And so that's how I see it. Like Apple had, junior production designers and engineers that like had to go grok out like the finer details of the iPhone. They're called product design engineers, like where they actually like machine that's like, here's Johnny's designs, make it real. And I met one at on like a school trip to Apple, and he was he was designing how like the parts would be machined in like the CAD files for manufacturing and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's take the last question, or it's more of an observation, I would say, from Sam. I might be wrong here, but something I'm getting from the talks overall is that AI prototypes are more of an artifacts or demos to better communicate our design concepts better, so they are able to understand and consume the design as it's meant to be, while the production-ready designs are still shipped with the Figma file still. Anyone feel free to correct me here. And I have some thoughts around that, but Caden, you can take it, yeah, take it first.
Yeah, like something like a lot of the back and forth I'm having with like my friends and peers is like this kind of like zero sum attitude of like, oh, now that we have like a working prototype, we don't need Figma anymore. Um, I, like just because like 3D modeling became a thing, like for building buildings, didn't like kill the blueprint. And like there's different layers of specifications in engineering. They've been doing this for years, like level 0 diagrams, level 1 diagrams, level 2 diagrams. There's different artifacts for different abstractions of conversation, and those never went away, right? So yeah, it's like you're using the AI tools to quickly like methodically suss out all the bad ideas, because like you need to have a bunch of bad ideas and get through that work before you get to the good idea. And AI's finally made that possible where it doesn't hurt to like simulate. Like just think of AI as a simulation machine. It's just simulating a bunch of different ideas. And then eventually you need to have the blueprints, and that those are the canvas designs, like all the different states, the annotations, like the actual like spec contract. I think like it like Claude to code to canvas like has made Figma actually more essential in the process, not less.
Yeah, that's a good perspective in terms of like the different levels of abstractions. Um, for the sake of time, I wanted to wrap up here, Kaden. If I think we've captured all the questions in the chat. Thank you so much for your time, for your commitment to craft this presentation, to share your insights with others. And for everyone who's curious, check out Caden's newsletter. And I'm excited for your upcoming podcast because I read Eric's book a long time ago, and I'm surprised that he's still around, sharing new thoughts and new books. Looking
Yeah.
forward to.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Hope everyone have a great rest of the week and happy weekend.
Hey, listener, thanks again for listening to The Way of Product. As we power down today's session on the fusion of creativity and technology, let's solidify the energy you've gotten from our dialogue today. If you've gleaned insights or strategies that could turbocharge your projects, I have a small but powerful ask. Swing by the platform where you're hearing this and leave a review. Think of it as your digital high five to us. It's a fuel that propels this content to more creative technologists like you, amplifying the impact of the shared knowledge. So until our next interview, keep pioneering and pushing the envelope. Thanks again for lending your ears and your imagination to our community. Catch you on the next download.